I've written it out a dozen times. Deleted it 13. That text, the one I swore I'd never send. And yet here I am, standing behind the counter at the repair shop with my phone in my hand, fingers hovering, because she just walked in again. I should back up. It's not like we're close. Not like I know her past or what she thinks about when she's alone. All I know is that for the last 3 weeks, she's come in twice, each time carrying something broken. A lamp, a watch. Today it's a coffee grinder, the kind with heavy steel blades that looks older than me. When she sets it down, the sound is heavier than it should be. She doesn't just drop things. She places them, like there's meaning in the act. That's what struck me the first time, too. The way her hands moved with this quiet certainty, like she was used to people watching. Or maybe used to avoiding it. Do you think it can be fixed? She asks, voice low but not weak. There's something careful in the way she speaks, as though every word passes through a filter before reaching me. Yeah, I say too quickly. I mean, probably. I'll need to check the motor. Her mouth curves, not into a smile exactly, more like the faint memory of one. And for some reason it lands harder than if she'd laughed. I take the grinder to the back, pretending to be busy with screws and wires. Truth is, my hands are clumsy because I can feel her presence behind the counter, the weight of her stillness. Most people fill silence with chatter. She doesn't. She lets it stretch, like she trusts the air between us to carry whatever she won't say. When I return, she's standing with her arms folded, but not defensively. It's more like she's keeping herself contained. The overhead light catches silver in her hair, but it doesn't dull her. It sharpens her, like an outline too defined to ignore. It'll take a few days, I tell her. Parts might be hard to find. That's fine. She studies me for a second longer than comfortable, then looks away, brushing a strand of hair from her face. There's a pause, the kind where I should hand her the claim ticket and let her leave. But then she glances at the small stack of books under the counter. Mine, not for sale. Paperbacks with bent spines. She notices the one on top. You read him? She asks, tapping the cover with a finger tipped in pale polish. I nod, suddenly aware of how juvenile I must seem. Yeah, kind of obsessed, actually. Her eyes flick back to me. Obsession has its dangers, she says, soft enough that I'm not sure if she meant me to hear. Before I can answer, the bell above the door rings, another customer stepping in. She straightens, almost imperceptibly, and the space between us collapses back into something ordinary. She gives me a polite nod, collects her bag, and leaves with the faintest trace of her perfume lingering in the air. The new customer asks about batteries. I answer automatically, my body on autopilot. My mind, it's still back in that pause, that moment when she noticed the book, when she looked at me just a little too long. I don't know what it means. Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. But tonight, I'll write the text again. The one I'll never send. Because I can't stop thinking about the way she said obsession. I was bent over the workbench when I heard the bell above the door, the low creak of hinges that hadn't been oiled in years. Something in me knew it was her before I even looked up. She stood in the doorway, coat half-buttoned against the drizzle outside, eyes scanning the room like she was making sure it was safe before stepping further in. She carried no appliance this time, just herself. I was nearby, she said after a pause, though I hadn't asked. Thought I'd check. I wiped my hands on a rag, more nervous than the first time, because now I had no excuse to hide behind screws and tools. It's coming along. The replacement part should be here by tomorrow. She nodded once, slowly, then let her gaze wander around the shop. Most people dismiss the place as clutter, shelves stacked with radios, lamps, odd machines nobody recognizes. She walked between them as if she was browsing in a gallery. You keep it all alive, she murmured. Or tried to. There was something in her tone, not admiration, not exactly. More like she understood the stubbornness in refusing to throw things away. Maybe she knew it firsthand. I leaned on the counter, trying not to stare, but failing. I noticed the way her fingers trailed lightly over the dusty edge of a clock, careful, like she didn't want to disturb it. Her nails were trimmed short, the kind of hands that once worked hard but now carried themselves with restraint. You look tired, I blurted before I could stop myself. She froze, not in offense, but as if I'd tugged at a thread she hadn't meant to expose. For a moment, her eyes met mine. There was a flicker there, not anger, not irritation, just recognition. Then she gave a small laugh, low and unguarded, and shook her head. I suppose I am. The sound of her laugh caught me off guard. It wasn't practiced, not the polite one she'd used last time. This one was warmer, but fleeting, like she'd already regretted letting it out. She pressed her lips together, recovering that guarded calm. We stood there, silence thick, but not uncomfortable. I caught myself noticing more than I should. The faint crease near her mouth when she frowned, the way her shoulders carried tension like a habit. She adjusted her coat, preparing to leave. I should let you work. Yeah, I said, though I wanted to keep her there, talking about broken things that weren't just machines. At the door, she paused, hand on the handle, eyes on the street outside. And then, without turning, she said, "Don't stay up too late with it. Some things can wait till morning." She didn't mean the grinder. I'm almost sure. The door shut behind her, but the echo of her voice stayed. And I realized the silence she left was heavier than the cluttered shop itself. The storm started just after closing. One of those sudden downpours that makes the street outside look blurred, like the whole town's been smudged by water. I was locking up when I saw her standing under the awning, coat pulled tight, watching the rain with a quiet resignation. "You'll be waiting a while," I said, pulling the shutters halfway down. She turned, startled, then gave that almost smile again. "Seems that way." I hesitated. I should have wished her good night and gone upstairs to my tiny flat above the shop. Instead, I found myself unlocking the door again. "You can wait inside. Until it calms down." She considered it, lips pressed as if weighing consequences, then stepped back in. Her presence changed the room instantly. Not louder, not brighter, but sharper. Like the air knew to hold itself still around her. I made tea, because it gave my hands something to do. She sat at the counter, tracing the rim of a chipped mug, not drinking. The silence between us was heavy, but not unfriendly. I wanted to ask why she came back so often, why she lingered. But instead, I said, "You always walk home?" She tilted her head, eyes narrowing slightly. "You're observant." "Noticing isn't the same as understanding," I said. That earned me the faintest laugh, though her shoulders didn't relax. She sipped finally, and for a second, her face softened, less guarded. The storm outside thundered, rattling the windows, and the sound seemed to pull something loose in her. "I shouldn't really be here," she said suddenly, almost to herself. Then she shook her head. "It's late. I should call a cab." Her phone buzzed before she could. The screen lit up with a name. She quickly turned face down. She didn't answer. The air tightened. I pretended not to notice, though every nerve in me did. Instead, I leaned closer across the counter, lowering my voice like we were sharing a secret. "You don't have to explain." She looked at me then, really looked, as though deciding whether to let me be someone she trusted. The space between us felt impossibly small. Her hand rested near mine, close enough that if either of us moved, even slightly, the moment hung. A breath, a storm, a heartbeat, and then headlights swept across the window, a car pulling up outside. She pulled her hand back as if burned. "My ride's here," she said quickly, standing before I could speak. Her coat was half on, her hair loose where the rain had dampened it. She didn't meet my eyes as she left. The bell above the door jingled, swallowed by the storm. I stayed at the counter, staring at the mug she hadn't finished. My hand still tingled where hers hadn't touched. The grinder was finally fixed. I placed it carefully in a box, waiting, though I wasn't sure if I wanted her to collect it. The object felt secondary now, an excuse that had long since outlived itself. She came late in the evening, after most shops had gone dark. Her hair was damp from the misty air, coat unbuttoned like she'd walked faster than usual. "I shouldn't keep showing up like this," she said without greeting, her voice quieter than the last time. I slid the box across the counter. "It's ready." She looked at it, then at me. Neither of us moved to close the space. The tick of the old wall clock filled the silence. "Finally," she said, almost to herself, "what are we doing?" The question froze me. It wasn't playful, not casual. It was raw, stripped down to something we'd both avoided naming. I opened my mouth, but no answer came. My throat tightened, words falling back before they reached air. She exhaled sharply, leaning against the counter. You're too young. I'm too. She cut herself off. Her jaw worked, fighting the admission. It can't be anything. The room felt smaller, her presence louder than the storm ever had. I tried to steady myself with the simplest reply. I know. But the way I said it, low, uneven, betrayed me. Her eyes flicked up to mine, steady, searching. The silence between us thickened, charged. She crossed her arms, then let them fall, restless. For once, she didn't hold herself together. You look at me like, she stopped, pressing her lips tight. Don't. Please don't. I swallowed. I can't help it. The admission slipped out, bare and unpolished. And for the first time, she didn't look away. Her gaze locked on mine. Too long, too direct. The kind of look that pressed into your skin, left something behind. Neither of us moved. Neither of us dared. The grinder in its box sat untouched between us, like proof of what should have been a simple transaction. She whispered then, so faint I almost missed it. You don't know what it costs to be seen like this. Her words hollowed me. Because she was right, I didn't know. I only knew the weight in her voice, the ache underneath it. We stood there, staring, saying nothing more. The shop felt unbearably quiet, as though the whole world outside had gone still just to listen. At last, she reached for the box, hands trembling just slightly. She didn't leave right away. She just stood, holding it, lips parting like she might speak again. But all she said, barely audible, was, "Don't make me want this." And then she was gone. I told myself it was normal. She had no reason to. The grinder was fixed. We had no unfinished business. But the silence settled heavy. I kept glancing at the door every time the bell rang, half disappointed when it wasn't her, half relieved. Then one evening, just as I was about to lock up, she appeared. No coat this time, just a plain sweater and jeans, like she hadn't planned on being seen. I left something, she said. Her voice was steady, but her eyes weren't. What was it? I asked. She reached into her bag and pulled out a folded photograph. She placed it carefully on the counter, not for me to keep, just to look. A man stared back at me, smiling at whoever had taken the picture. He had the kind of easy charm I'd never manage, hair tousled, eyes alive. That was my husband, she said simply. The word caught me. Was. I stayed silent, because anything I said would be clumsy, wrong. He died 5 years ago. She didn't look at me when she said it, only at the photo. Her fingers lingered on the corner, as though keeping him tethered. You remind me of him sometimes. Not your face, just the way you notice things you shouldn't. My throat felt tight. I wanted to ask questions about him, about her, but the moment didn't belong to curiosity. It belonged to the way her voice wavered, the tremor she tried to hide. She gave a small, apologetic laugh, shaking her head. I shouldn't have said that. You can't, I murmured. Her eyes lifted to mine, and for the first time, I saw them wet. Not tears spilling, not broken sobs, just the quiet sheen of someone who had carried too much for too long. I forget what it's like to be looked at, she whispered. After he was gone, it felt easier not to let anyone close enough. Safer. The clock ticked louder than usual. I could hear the hum of the old fridge in the back, every sound magnified in the silence between us. I wanted to reach across the counter, to close the distance. But I didn't. Instead, I asked the only thing I could. Do you still love him? Her breath caught. She pressed the photo flat against the counter, eyes flickering away. Every day. Then, softer, almost to herself. But sometimes, when I see you, it feels like betrayal. The words cracked something in me. Not joy, not pain, something heavier, nameless. She folded the photo back into her bag, as though sealing it away again. But the echo of her confession stayed, thick in the air, impossible to pack up with it. Before she left, she touched the counter with her fingertips. Not me, not my hand, just the space between us. A gesture so small it shouldn't have mattered. And yet it did. She came back the next night. No excuse this time. No broken appliance. No photograph. No explanation. Just her, standing in the doorway long after closing, as though she'd been debating with herself on the sidewalk before finally pushing the door open. "I shouldn't be here," she said. I didn't move from the counter. And yet, her lips pressed into something between a frown and a smile. She stepped inside, closing the door softly, like she didn't want the world outside to hear. For a while, neither of us spoke. The shop was dim, lit only by the desk lamp over the workbench. Dust floated in its beam, slow and aimless, like time itself had softened. "Finally," she said, "I keep telling myself I don't want this, that I shouldn't. But every time I walk away, I end up back here." The words weren't a confession. They were a surrender, small and shaking. I didn't answer right away. I just watched her cross the room, slower than usual, as if every step was its own argument. When she finally leaned against the counter opposite me, our eyes met and stayed. Too long, too steady, until the silence grew unbearable. "What are we doing?" she asked again, but softer this time, less a demand and more a plea. I drew a breath, steadying the tremor in my chest. "Maybe nothing," I said. "Maybe everything. But we can't keep pretending it's not there." Her hands rested on the counter, fingers splayed. For the first time, they weren't careful or measured. They trembled. She looked at them, then at me. "I feel guilty," she admitted. "Like I'm stealing something I shouldn't. Like I'm betraying someone who's not even here anymore." I shook my head. "You're not stealing. You're living." The words surprised me as much as her. But I meant them. And she must have felt it, because her shoulders dropped, just a fraction, as though a weight had shifted. Slowly, carefully, I placed my hand near hers. Not touching, just close enough that the warmth carried across the inches. She didn't pull away. Instead, after a long silence, her fingers moved, hesitant, then deliberate, brushing against mine. It was nothing. Bare skin, the smallest touch. But it was everything too. Her eyes closed briefly, like she was memorizing the moment. When they opened, there was no performance left, no guard. Just her. Neither of us said it aloud. We didn't need to. The air carried it for us. We stayed like that, hands barely linked, the storm of restraint finally quieting into something still. Not resolved, not simple, but real. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady, though her eyes glistened. "Then let's not name it. Let's just be here." And so we were. I think about that night more often than I admit. Not because something dramatic happened. No declarations, no fireworks, no kiss stolen in the dark. It wasn't that kind of story. What stays with me is the silence we shared, the way it folded around us like a fragile truce. She never asked me to name it, and I never tried. Maybe that's why it worked. Looking back now, I realize I went into it thinking love had to be loud. Hearts racing, words spilling, the kind of thing movies make you believe. But with her, it wasn't noise. It was quiet. It was the steady rhythm of two people choosing, for once, not to run. She taught me that love isn't always about possession. Sometimes it's just about being allowed to see someone as they are, tired, guarded, imperfect, and having them let you stay anyway. And I think I gave her something too. Not youth, not distraction, just presence. Someone willing to notice the small things. The way her hands shook when she reached for mine. The pause in her voice when she almost said too much. I didn't fix her. I couldn't. But maybe I reminded her that she was still visible, still capable of being felt. We didn't build a forever. That wasn't the point. What we built was a moment, a fragile, necessary pause in both our lives that carried weight far beyond its size. And that, I've come to learn, can be just as lasting. Sometimes I catch myself scrolling through old messages, staring at the draft I never sent, that forbidden text, the one I thought would ruin everything. Now I know I didn't need to send it. The truth was written in the silence we shared, in the touch of her hand against mine. That was the only message that mattered. People think love is about grand gestures, but I think it's in the restraint, the hesitation, the choice to stay in a room when it would have been easier to walk away. She walked into my life carrying broken things. And somehow, without meaning to, we fixed each other. Not completely, not permanently, but enough to keep going. That's all love ever really has to be. Enough. So if you've ever stood in that kind of silence with someone, where words fail but presence says it all, you'll understand why I'll never regret it. And maybe you have your own forbidden text sitting unsent in your phone. The question is, would you send it?